And with me today is the beautiful Sarissa Powdrill, our co-host.
Thank you, Ms. Bordner. How are you today?
I am very good.
You're looking really cute.
Well, thank you so much. Yes. I'm not talking like Joe Cocker today, so that's awesome. Oh, it took a month, but okay.
She feels better.
I do feel better, so thank you so much for connecting with us. We're going to talk a little bit, just for a couple of minutes, about what we're doing at the Community Council, because we are really, really rolling. We are turning 80 next year, like I keep saying. It was just a teensy bit older than me. So we are going to do something that has never been done in the history of the world, so I'm just going to put it out there. Next year, 2020, we are going to put 5,000 people to work. 5,000. And so 5,000 people. It's only been tried once before, and 3,000 in a year, so we are going to really do it up like Dallas is supposed to do it. We're going to put 5,000 people to work. So stay tuned for more information on how you can help do that. We do have some events coming up. We have a CEO reception because some CEO, I don't know, somewhere was nominated by the Dallas Business Journal as, most admired CEO. So we're having a party. So when where's that at?
We're having that at Jackson Walker LLP Law Office on Ross Avenue. If you log on to our website, you'll get that invitation, and that's at ccadvance.org, September 5th. From 6 to 8 p.m. and it's a meet and greet for our new CEO, Miss Janie Bordner.
And so what else we got going on? We got some training.
We have a lot going on, a lot of free education. So on August 7th, to set the date, we have our full stack IT training. So if you're interested in walking into the IT industry and you need the training, you have no idea how to get there, SkillQuest got you covered.
Yeah, we are the no excuse. You have no excuse for not attending class or graduating class because we take care of everything for you. We pay, rent, utility assistance. We'll give you food, gas cards. We'll give you a lift to class.
No excuses why you can't go to
That's
school.
Right. So if you really are serious about, getting a job that pays a little bit better, full stack developers make about $125 an hour. This is the one for you. So you need to come. Tomorrow is our first class. It's at our office. So again, go to our website and find out more information.
And we also have U-Smart cell phone repair technician training. So that is a evolving or growing industry in repairing cell phones. Mine needs fixing right now. So that training starts August 20th. Through the 23rd, and that's free training. You'll leave training. We provide job placement, making at least $20 an hour. So that's again free career training, with Community Council, but it's hosted at the
Catholic Charities.
Which
is right across the street.
Right across the street, our neighbors.
That's right.
So if you're interested in that training, again, log on to our website. It's a easy breezy registration process. So again, no excuses as to why you can't make more money in any field you're desiring, because you have no excuses here at Community Council.
So I do want to do a little shout out to our Dallas Area Agency on Aging because they just won a national award.
Congratulations, DAAA.
That's right. It's an innovative award because of their innovative partnership with Lyft and how they work together to get seniors to their doctor's appointments. And so that's a major thing. It's never been done.
Service.
That's right. It's never been done in the country. We do that. And then I would also like to take just a second to thank our operators at 211 because we partner with Homeland Security, and with all these things that have been happening this week, we have been inundated with phone calls and needs for support, and those guys work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they are really helping the community. So thank you so much for all that you do.
Absolutely.
So today, I'm very nervous. I know Sarissa's a little nervous because we have like the true Renaissance man This is the guy that when he speaks, people tend to listen.
Take notes.
And I certainly have been listening all day. Mm-hmm. So we have Phil Barnett here. So how are you doing, Mr. Barnett?
Mr. Barnett.
I'm doing well, ladies. Thank you. Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you for taking the time. We know your time is very precious, so thank you for being here.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about you and some of the stuff that you're involved in.
Well, you could best characterize me as a serial entrepreneur. Not serial killer, serial entrepreneur. I'm on somewhere around the 18th business that I've either started or helped get going, from helping EDS start their first internet division and kind of launching that back in the mid-90s to before that, a couple of businesses tangential to a family business I grew up in, to after EDS, part of a team taking the company public back in the late 90s when that was the dot-com thing to do, up to and including now with, I want to say there's probably half a dozen things I have going right now. So there is a benefit to being a bit ADD. So you spin a lot of plates. But I'll tell you, most recently I've narrowed my focus, even though there's a lot of irons in the fire, really focusing on some unique giftedness and not trying to wear all the hats. Sometimes in business you have to, and in startups it's very often necessary, but really focusing on those things that I think I've been uniquely gifted to do.
So tell us a little bit about Promise Keepers. I know you're very involved with them, and they're kind of making a comeback. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Promise Keepers was started back in 1990 by Coach McCartney, and he was the University of Colorado head coach, and it was a ministry geared at men, primarily an evangelical ministry, and he had a vision for it lasting about 10 years, and for about 10 years up until 2000, 2001, it really thrived. It's atrophied over the years. The final event was Stand in the Gap. It was on the mall in Washington, D.C. The Park Service estimated that there were between 1.3 million and 1.5 million. Wow. The largest single gathering, regardless of what anybody says, the largest single gathering. But as Promise Keepers is being resurrected, we wanted to consider doing a gathering maybe on a national park or even a Civil War battlefield. So our leadership went to D.C. to see the Park Service, and they were surprised to walk into this federal building and see this billboard-size photograph of that Promise Keepers event. And they asked them why was that, and they said, well, it wasn't because of the Christian cause or anything. It was two reasons. One, it was the largest event, the gathering of men ever on the mall, and when those men left, the Park Service didn't pick up one piece of trash, not a single piece of trash. So they juxtaposed that to an environmental group had met on the mall 3 weeks earlier, and they picked up 81 metric tons of garbage from the environmentalists. So that was kind of a bellwether for the Park Service. But what we're doing now, really, the mission is more of a discipleship, calling men to biblical masculinity and elevating biblical femininity, and what does that mean, and how does a man behave differently and speak differently and look at the world differently, and really engage in culture in a more meaningful way rather than just leaving it to kind of deteriorate on its own.
Well, I've had the pleasure to spend a few hours with you, and I have to say that very few people are true servant leaders, but you definitely are. I mean, and it's just, you're a very faith-based person, you're very purpose-driven, and you really just want to help other people. So, and I appreciate that, and thank you so much. I know that, Sarissa, you and I talk about women and how we need to get ourselves together. And somebody
example.
I was going to say, somebody at lunch today, we were talking, and he said, you know what? Good men do good things. And so sometimes we forget that.
Yeah.
You know, so I
Especially
just
with the climate
absolutely.
right now.
I think we
yes.
all need to show up a little bit differently.
Yes, we do.
Absolutely.
We do.
Well, and when you step out, the one thing that I recognize is you also draw fire.
True.
And I think in a military analogy, if you're the buck private potato peeler in the back of the mess hall, nobody's shooting at you, but the enemy is not concerned with you. But
Right.
when you accept those field commissions and you stand out to make a change for the good, and it's very important that the positions that we take are purely biblical, but those very often have become political. And we just don't want to politicize things, but, you know, in the Bill of Rights, the first thing is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if you stand
Right.
up for life, the basic, fundamental, unalienable right, there are going to be people that stand in opposition to that. And we
true.
see that more and more. So we understand that, but we know that we're not fighting against flesh and blood. We're fighting
Right.
a spiritual battle.
Absolutely.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Absolutely.
So if people want to get involved, how can they?
Well, Promise Keepers, you can go to promisekeepers.org. I'll make sure you have my information so people can contact me directly, because even though we're not going to be an event-based organization,
Sure.
we are starting with an event July 31st, August 1st of next year, 2020, and the objective is to have somewhere near 5 million men participate. It's going to be at AT&T Stadium, so we're going to have 80,000 plus men there, but then we're going to simulcast to somewhere between 300 to 500 other venues, churches, etc. And I'll tell you one of the fundamental differences. We've already been alerted that there's going to be a lot of protest, a lot of people that will stand in opposition. But the objective is, rather than put those protesters on the other side of the street behind barricades, we're bringing them right up close. We're putting tents in and misters, because it will be July
Wow.
31st. We'll have snow cone machines and refreshments, and all the wives of the men will be out there wanting to give them an opportunity to express their views and express ours, and why we don't stand opposed to them. We stand opposed to those things that stand opposed to God.
That is amazing.
Let me call my husband.
I know. Right? Well, count us in as
Being a
volunteers. That's
company
the truth.
of
We'll be
good
there.
men,
We'll be there
yes.
volunteering.
Absolutely.
So, absolutely. So let us know. So some of the other things you've been working with are...
Well, I've had the unique honor. I really have had a sense, and since I was a child, and an affinity to Joseph, that there was going to be something. I was a dreamer. I was my father's favorite, much to the chagrin of my siblings. But I felt God was going to use me to do something good, and I believe some of that is coming to fruition now. I've gotten involved with a company that has done for apps and platforms what Wix and WordPress have done for websites. So back in the mid-'90s, if you wanted a very compelling website, you'd spend $10,000 to $40,000, maybe $1 million, and it would take months, and then there was email. Well, then WordPress came along, and so now you could do a website in a matter of hours for a few hundred or at most a few thousand. We're doing that with apps and a platform. So as an example, we could launch an app for the community council in about 3 hours and have it fully functioning and launched to the entire world in 14 days for less than it used to cost to build a website. I think that has represented a tool, leveraging technology, that allows us to do some things that we could never do before. But I also, over the last 4 or 5 years, and particularly the last 6 or 8 months, have realized kind of that narrowing of the focus, and really wondering why I was given the opportunity to be in certain places that I probably had no business being. And I'll just tell you one story. I was invited to fill in for somebody to play in a charity golf tournament. Well, one of the guys that was in my group happened to be a member at Augusta National and asked me if I'd ever been, and I said no. Well, the next thing I know, I'm driving down Magnolia Lane and I'm having breakfast in the atrium dining room But this guy's company does a lot with golf, and so the people that he sponsored that were there with us was Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer and Gary Player and a bunch of others. He asked me, because he knew me by then, if I would give thanks for breakfast, and then we go outside, and Arnold Palmer comes and sits down next to me, and we just start talking. And I'm asking God, what am I doing here? How did I get here? And I tell him a story about an encounter that he and I had had back in the mid-'80s when I was on the host committee of a tournament. But then I asked him, I said, I know some about your faith origin, but when you were at the height of your game, you were working on Sunday. Well, his eyes teared up, and we spent the next 20 minutes talking about his faith journey and how God had drawn him back into that now that he couldn't play. And as I walked away from that table, I understood that I have an identity as a son of God, but I have a purpose in his kingdom. And so that has informed now everything that I do and will do the rest of my life.
I know, right? I think I'm about to cry because I'm a very purpose-driven person. So, we told our story all the time. So it's just amazing. Like I said, if you want good things to happen to you, you need to hang out with good people. I'm not sharing Mr. Barnett with you because he's mine.
And don't
just
go
gonna
by the look of profile pictures on LinkedIn, because I thought Mr. Barnett was like this standoffish guy, but he's like the most humble person ever. That's so inspiring.
It really, really is.
Any good you see in me is merely a reflection of something that's not me. I have a friend that's a sculptor, and he typically works in bronze, and really a mentor of mine, and he had been commissioned to do a piece in silver. Well, the silver came looking like little dirty BBs, and he put them in this crucible, and he keeps heating it up and skim the dross off and skim the dross. More heat, and this whole process takes hours. And I said, Robert, how do you know when the silver is ready? And he said, when I can see my reflection.
Wow.
And I saw that's what God's doing to me. He just keeps burning out the junk that doesn't need to be there.
Yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yes, love it. What books do you read? I love to ask successful people what fuels your brain. So I want to know what's on your book reading list for the month of August.
Well, as I told you, I typically am reading about 5 books at a time. But the book I would mention is by Ken Harrison, Rise of the Servant Kings, and he is a man that grew up in Oregon, went to Marine Officer Candidate School, ended up being a police officer in L.A. because his dad was a cop there, but he ended up in Compton. God had gotten a hold of his heart at an early age, but he had wandered very far from it. And he's at roll call one morning, and he said they were showing a news clip from the night before, and there's a group of policemen, and in the foreground are 8 dead bodies of gang members, and in the background are all these weeping women and children. And he said the cop that had his back to the camera was obviously telling a joke because all the cops were laughing, and then that cop turned around and it was him, and he was really convicted. And so shortly thereafter, the trajectory of his life changed. He spent a career in real estate, commercial real estate, but then was drawn into Promise Keepers, and really he thought his task was to shut it down because it had atrophied so. But through some divine intervention, he and his wife orchestrated getting the ministry out of debt and relaunching it, and so that's his story.
Okay.
And so, but I read a lot of business books. One of the favorites that I read over the last year again was Toxic Charity, and how good-natured Americans are. We think we're going to go in there, the benevolent Americans, and fix things, and more often than not, we make them worse. And so there are ways to do good deeds in a bad way, and we need to learn to do good things in a good way.
Absolutely. We learned that at the community council, so we are always we are always really very cognizant of what our community needs. As a matter of fact, we include them in needs assessments and, how can we help you? What can we do? And we're learning that with our staff as well. We're really trying to work really hard at doing that. So that is really good advice that we're trying to take, ourselves, as a matter of fact. So some of the things that you do for the community, I mean, it's just, you're out there helping.
Well, my wife and I serve lunch at the Austin Street Shelter once a month, which is not much. It's a very, very modest gesture, but it moves us a lot, and I think it means a lot to those people.
I think so.
I'm involved in more things than I like to admit, but I try not to spread myself too thin because I know that can dilute my effectiveness. You can give $100,000, $1 to 100,000 causes and not move the needle much. Correct. Or you can focus your efforts. I used to believe that running a kingdom-focused business meant that you run it with ethics and integrity and honor, and then you make as much money in the oil business as you can so you can write big checks. And I've had my perspective completely altered, and happens to be the black pastor that leads the Bible study that I host on Wednesday mornings, but he and I go to the field. We're not out there doing anything but kind of just sharing some love. As an example, we were drilling a well down near a river, and the first time I went up, I asked the guy what was on fire, and he said, that's not smoke, those are mosquitoes. So I made sure there were several cases of off whenever the crew got out there.
Wow.
They don't know who did it, and it doesn't matter, but it's just let them know that, because if ever there was a field ripe for harvest, it's the oil field. So one of the things I learned from my late father, I have had some opportunities to do some things in the spotlight, but that's very empty and hollow, and the glass runs dry the next day. And so I found out things after he was killed in '97 that he did that were just really moving that I never knew he did. You know, the best example was at his memorial service, Murray Linder, a Jewish guy from Connecticut, Linder's Bagels, came up to me and said, your dad was my best friend. And then about 5 minutes later, a guy that claims, and he says, I really did make it through the first grade, totally uneducated, ran the gas station where my dad frequented, and he pulled me aside and he said, your dad was my best friend.
Oh my goodness.
And that's what I want to be. I want to be a best friend to the gas station guy or to the prominent Jewish billionaire.
That is amazing.
That's life.
That is amazing.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about the oil business. Like, how did you get started in it? And, give us some insights.
Well, I had my father and his brothers grew up the sons of a sharecropper in East Texas, which means they had nothing. By the time they were out of high school, they had lived on 17 different farms.
Wow.
As soon as they could stand, not walk, but stand, they were with their mom and dad picking cotton in the field. So I grew up in West Texas, and that's the cotton capital of the world, and they wanted nothing to do with cotton.
Right.
And as we would say, you can't swing a dead cat in West Texas without hitting cotton, cattle, or oil. Well, my dad had a ranch where we had some cattle, but an uncle said we need to get in the oil business. So we didn't know what we were doing. Drilled 4 wells, got over 500 barrels a day. We thought, well, gee, this oil business is easy. Then didn't have anything to do with that. That was late 70s, early 80s. And then about 2006, I had some friends that said, we need some help. They had acquired some acreage up in Oklahoma, and we drilled and hit 31 consecutive wells. So I'd been involved in 35 out of 35. Wow. And probably will continue to have some hand in the oil business for forever, because one, when we do it right, we make a hole in the ground and money comes out, and a lot of it for a long time. Right. But it's also, we were just talking about this, we employ between 100 and 110 people every well that we drill. So that is a lot of people that I will never know, but got to pay their house payment, got to put their kids in school, and because these are great paying jobs, which some of the technical training, when we have a chance to discuss it as this app and platform company grows, there's going to be some opportunities here for people to grow. And as I told you, when I was back at EDS in the mid-90s, Sotheby's Auction House was a customer, and I found this little company in California that had been birthed in the East Bay of Pleasanton. It was called eBay. Well, we could have bought eBay for, a few $100,000. And then when we were taking the company public, somebody came to me, and most people didn't become aware of the internet until the Netscape Navigator browser came out. And this guy said, well, here's something that's cleaner and it's much easier to use. There are these 5 guys, you can buy this company for probably $500,000. It was called Google. Missed that one, strike 2.
Wow, big strike.
Then for a brief period of time, I've taught golf for a long time, and had an opportunity to be the Prestonwood Christian Academy varsity golf coach. And one of the girls on the team, her dad came up to me, knew I had some technology background, and said his son had just gotten a job out of college the previous May with Compaq, and he's wanting to leave to go to work for this company that had been catering to college kids and catering to high school. They were about to open it up to the public, and I said, well, what's it called? He says, well, they call it the Facebook. And I said, tell him to quit, go right there. So I say that to say this app company, I think, is as compelling as those 3, because I truly had no vision for what eBay or Google would become. I started to have some idea with Facebook. This brings the best of those, but it's technology that matters, technology with a purpose. It's taking some of those things that have made social media negative and addictive, and we're turning around and say, can't we use those to promote proper behavior, proper habits? And then by creating this closed environment, if somebody doesn't like what you're doing because they may stand politically opposed to it and they happen to be someplace where they can control the switch, they can just turn you off. But in this case, this is an environment that you would own, and nobody can censor what you're doing. So, but back to the oil business, I think it's the lowest common denominator. As I've told you before, it's more of an observation than a judgment, but it's oil that courses through the cardiovascular system of the global economy, and that's a good thing for the United States. We produce more natural gas in Texas than almost anywhere in the world. We're the #1 producer of oil, and we're really positioned to be a net exporter, and that really ensures our national security because we don't have countries that hate us that we're dependent on. So there's a lot of good to it from an employment standpoint. I think I would say nobody cares more about the environment and conservation than a hunter or a fisherman. Well, nobody takes better care of the environment than somebody that makes their living off of that. And I think the position that a lot of people have that, the oil industry are a bunch of, heartless ogres is just not true. They're just men and women just like us.
And the Economist newspaper released an ad back in July, and the title of the ad was, "The world's most valuable resource is no longer oil, but data. The data economy demands a new approach to antitrust rules." And it kind of goes back to what you just stated. How do you feel about that saying that the most valuable resource now is data?
Well,
versus oil?
it clearly is being monetized very rapidly. What I would say is, if data is the central nervous system, it doesn't function without the cardiovascular system. So the cardiovascular system courses oil through its veins. But I think data and these now giant companies that control so much of our life, that's why I think companies like this one that I've gotten involved with are so profound because they are taking some of the best aspects, repackaging it in a very positive way, but then giving you an opportunity to take control of the environment in which you choose to operate, so that you're not beholden to someone else. You don't have to depend on Facebook or Google or and somebody either directly or inadvertently cutting you off.
So you own your own information.
You own your own information. If the community council set up an app, if we set up an app, you could let the entire world see it at a certain level. But let's say you have, just as the luncheon we came from, you have a highly sensitive area like human trafficking or domestic violence. Well, then you would control who gets in there. Right. Case in point, only those women with children that are victims of domestic violence would have access by permission from you, not those predators and those meatheads that have put them in that situation. So you get to control all of that, and nobody outside of your world even has access to it. That's the way it's wrestling back control of data into the hands of the people that should own it. You should own your own data, and you should get to decide how it's used or if it's used at all.
Correct. I agree with you. Absolutely. Really do. So, we're waiting for our app to get I'm just going to put it out there. We're ready for our app, so that's awesome.
And can I ask one last question?
Sure.
Global economy for I'm going to call myself a dummy, but we do have a community youth development department. And I just want, for those that are students or students in college, those that are coming up in the business administration field or the engineering field, what advice or what pointers can you give them? How can they keep up with what's happening in our global economy today?
Well, I would say, and this is going to sound a bit elemental, but one of the things that is putting millennials and youngers at a perilous disadvantage is a lack of understanding of history. They need to learn all they can about history, and it's not Malcolm Gladwell's revisionist history. History is an objective thing. Our perception of it is what maybe clouds the view of history, but history and truth are absolutely critical, and then understanding technology and not taking it for granted. Don't just so willingly, almost unconsciously surrender all this data because you think you're getting some advantage, but what you're really doing is you are surrendering control of your very life to someone else. That's why environments like we're talking about, where you can segregate that out. So history, there is absolute truth and it's apprehendable. History is a knowable fact. Truth, and then understanding technology and how to maximize its use and how to protect yourself from its misuse.
Right, absolutely.
Very good pointers. I'm going to have to watch this a couple of times.
I know, I really am too.
Write that down. That was very good.
So I have to tell you that, I'm sitting here and because so many things in my life have just been because I'm very faith conscious and, faith-based, and I know that you are as well.
Yes.
And so the advice that I would give to people that are watching and how we want to say that we connect the community together is really surround yourself with like-minded people. Yep. I tell our staff and each other all the time that sometimes you just have to bless and release those folks that are not good for you. I'm just going to say it. I'm going to be my mother today, so not good for you. So sometimes you just have to bless and release. We've had to do that with clients. We've had to do it with staff. We've had to do it with each other, friends. It doesn't matter. So, it really becomes kind of a mantra that you need to live by. So you need to figure out what's good for you so that you can be good for other people. And that's, I always leave you with the challenge every day is that, challenge yourself to be a better person, to show up a little bit differently. And then go out and make a difference. People talk about making a difference all the time, but talking about it is not going to make it happen. So sometimes you just have to walk out on that ledge and take that step and just you know what? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But at least you tried, and then you can try something else.
Yeah.
So really, we fail falling forward. So sometimes it's okay to fall and to fail, I think.
Yeah.
So
I think the best of the best that has been on this podcast
absolutely.
has shown us that.
I have to tell you that I ask for increase in favor every day, and I ask that for everybody that is watching too. I want you to succeed, and I want us to all be able to work together. Mm-hmm. We have great, grand plans, and we cannot do it without you. Our last podcast, you heard that, we started a campaign. We are trying to get 300 people to give us $100 a month. Mm-hmm. So that's $360,000 in a year. That's amazing. It takes $400 a month to feed a family of 4, and we work with 8,000 people a day. Yes. So if you know somebody, or if you can give $100 a month, you can really, really, really change the lives of a lot of people. And we are trying to put 5,000 people to work. That we're not handing out, things. We are asking people to go to work. Mm-hmm. We are working with employers. We are working with the city of Dallas. We're working with all kinds of people. Mm-hmm. And we are going to put 5,000 people to work in 1 year. It's never done, but we're going to do it this year, and we need your help. So that is my challenge for you today, and how you can connect in the community. I'm telling you, if you ever get a chance to meet Mr. Barnett, your life will change in a way that is not even funny. Mm-hmm. I know that another Phil is your kind of mentor, so I definitely want Mr. Barnett to be our mentor. So there's going to be a fist fight in a minute, just going to say. But really, that is my challenge to you. Sarissa, you have a challenge for anybody today?
No, I have to piggyback on to you, to get to work every morning, and you have families already waiting at the door to come in just for help, and I've been there before as well. It just goes a long way to see them, the difference in their attitude as how they walked in versus how they leave our office, happy and very appreciative of our case managers and taking their time. The only other thing I will add mm-hmm. is if you want to give and you have that feeling right now to give right now, and I know you're feeling that, you can text GIVE to 972-325-7484. Again, you can text GIVE at 972-325-7484. And even if it's $5, you wouldn't understand how $5 just helps a mom get to work tomorrow, or to get a ride home from work to home this evening. $5 goes a long way. But of course, we want the 100 people to give, the 300 people to give $100. But if you're looking at your wallet and you're like, I don't have much gas money, of lunch this evening for some children at the dinner table, it goes a long way.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So, parting words of wisdom, Mr. Barnett?
Well, I would echo some of what you said. A friend of mine always says OQP, only quality people.
That's right, absolutely.
Bad company corrupts good morals, mm-hmm. So it only takes a little leaven to go through the whole loaf. Mm-hmm. The other thing I would say, there's probably nobody that you've met that's had more colossal failure. But
I don't know. I live with me every day.
Yeah, but I would rather have gotten up and struck out than never known what it was to be at the plate. And
absolutely.
So, as a lot of good things are happening even now in my life, I'm trying to close the doors on some real colossal failures, but keep falling forward, because the only time you lose is when you give up.
Absolutely. That is a t-shirt. Definitely.
Moment.
So we're going to have a whole t-shirt store. But truthfully, I do challenge you to make yourself a better person and make the world a better place, and make your community a place where you're proud to live and just proud to be there. So until next time, thank you so much for joining us on Community Connect. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.